meetings, and he's been meeting with professors at Peking, and now we are doing this conference here at UFRGS, and then we have a meeting with Professor Padula, the president director of the Confucius Institute. So he only has one day here in Porto Alegre. He's based in Rio de Janeiro, and has been asked to do lectures at the UFRGS and the Naval War School. So he was kind enough to pay us a visit and give this lecture to these very select and qualified audience that we have here today. Professor Aravind, he's a senior research fellow at the Peking University. At PKU, he leads the research on China, India, South Asia economic engagements as a special focus, and conducts research on comparative aspects of China-South Asia relations. He holds a PhD from the Jawaharlal University in India, and his research interests include China's foreign policy, Chinese business, Chinese manufacturing trends, urbanization, and Chinese government and politics. He contributes on China-related issues in a number of Indian journals and international newspapers, and he has been interviewed by leading Indian and global media as well. Before joining Peking University, Professor Aravind worked at the Institute of Chinese Studies in the capacity of Assistant Director and Associate Fellow. I would like to thank my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Eric Ribeiro, who made the contact possible. He is a doctor here by the program in International Strategic Studies at UFRGS, and he's now living in India and teaching there. So he'll be watching us through YouTube later on. This lecture is going to be made available at the Center for International Studies on Government YouTube channel, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Guilherme. I think I'm going to stand. You want to switch off the lights? So, at the outset, let me thank the university for hosting me, and also Eric for introducing me to Guilherme and my colleagues over here. This is my solo trip to Brazil, and second trip. The second city in Brazil I'm visiting, but I find this place is more vibrant than Rio, because we expect Rio to be, the capital city or the prime city to be welcoming the foreign guests. There was a particular reason I came to this city, Porto Alegre, because I see there is a lot of geographical importance the city carries out, and also it is very different from the other cities. So I chose to come here apart from my tomorrow's travel to university. So I feel fortunate to be here and talk to you or share my ideas. Working in Peking University is not something prestigious, actually. It is challenging for me because being based in Peking University and Indian, I see a lot of
just to stand a little bit more in front because of the interference in the microphone.
Okay, good.
Yeah, perfect. Right there.
So I see that there are a lot of things. Being an Indian working in Peking University, I come across, and that is a part of my teaching, academy, and professional experience. I would like to share that with you. You might have heard about India's relationship with China. In general, in newspapers, we hear a lot about India and China, like how much conflictual situations we have, how much competition we are engaged with, and what cooperation we are trying to do that. You might have also heard about that this century is Asia's century, and India's growth is, equivalent to that of China's growth. China has been doing a lot of activities across the globe, not only in Asia, in Europe, in America, in Africa. And that's where I wanted to focus this lecture on. A lot of things have transpired in the last 40 years, that is from 1978, and in the last 70 years, that is since 1948. the way China is engaging with the globe, the way China is engaging with its neighbors and friends. Neighbors is in the proximity, because you cannot change neighbors, right? You can change your friends, but you cannot change your neighbors. So policy has been diverse, and they have changed closer way in the last 4 to 5 decades. So when I decided to speak something unique over here, I thought, why not speak about how China is trying to change the global governance, how China is trying to influence the global institutions by mere its presence, and what kind of approaches it is taking to pursue its goal of changing the dynamics of multilateral forums. You have heard about the recent, the famous term the Chinese are using, Belt and Road. So it's one of the forms the Chinese are using. It's an initiative of connectivity projects, infrastructure projects, building financial linkages, institutions, and other things, expanding market. China is using more other fashions and forms to establish a stronghold globally. So the title of the presentation is setting up the rules to rule, and the Chinese engagement with global multinational institutions. So that is the broad idea about how things will be developing or evolving in front of you next 30 to 40 minutes. Any one of you have gone to China so far? Any one of you in China? How great? How long have you been in China? Yeah?
1 month.
1 month. A fellowship?
What?
A fellowship?
Yeah.
And which place you went to Peking?
We bring to CUC.
Sorry?
CUC Communication University.
Which place is that? No, which city you went to China?
In Beijing.
In Beijing, right? So if you go to China once in a while, it is astonishing. But if you keep going to China frequently, once in a year, and you go there about 5 to 6 years, you will see that China is changing very rapidly. So China says that it's a developing country, but it has developed a lot in global south. For example, if you go to India, if you go to Brazil, if you go to Africa, or any country in Southeast Asia, and then you go to China, China gives the best example actually how it has overcome the deficiency in infrastructure, deficiency in dealing with urbanization, the problems with social development indexes. So China has developed a lot in the last 5 to 6 decades, and it puts up the best example in front of the global south as well as the global nation state system, how it can give examples or lessons to the rest of the world. So going forward, what I have done is the presentation is broadly into 2 main sections. The first section talks about what has really changed in Chinese foreign policy making, Chinese foreign economic policy making. That's one section. And the second section is what are the deliberations actually, and if the Chinese principles of Chinese foreign economic policy had changed, what has changed in its multilateral engagements. And then the presentation taking these 2 sections is divided into 5 parts. First part, the key drivers in Chinese economic policy making. Second one, new key levers of Chinese economy. Part 3, actors and strategies in Chinese foreign economic policy making. Part 4 is about China and multilateral institutions, and Part 5 is way forward. So key drivers, and we'll talk about what is driving Chinese foreign policy making. New key levers. So new key levers means in 1970s the Chinese priorities were different, as far as the economic agenda was concerned. In 80s it again changed. In 90s it again changed. Late 90s China joined WTO, and then up to 2008 until the global crisis, the priorities were different. Post 2008, 2009, after the global financial crisis, GFC, the priorities, challenges, and the important agenda of the Chinese state again changed. Who are the important players in China who are playing important role or acting to further these drivers and key levers? So we're going to speak about the key actors and then Chinese engagement with multilateral institutions, because if China wants to develop fast, develop steadily, it also needs to make sure that it takes the global institutions in its favor, right? So it is important for China that it tries to go on the right side of the global institutions. So China has been very actively engaging at global level, at global scale, to influence its stand, to influence its role in the policy making at global multilateral financial institutions, economic institutions, or trade institutions. And then we go to way forward. Okay? So the first one, we're looking at the key drivers. So what are the key drivers of the Chinese economy? These key drivers have been reflected in Chinese economic policy making, especially in the last 20 years. 20 years starting from 2000, when China applied for WTO, and 2001, 2002, when China was adopted to WTO. 2000 was a watershed period in Chinese foreign economic policy making, because so far, 78, that China started opening up and reforming economy, right? Right? In 1978. So it took a while for China in 1980s. China was trying to understand, trying to gather its feet, basically, what it should develop first. Industries, agriculture, services, township villages, what kind of agrarian reforms it needs to carry forward, how it can support the small-scale industries, big-scale industries, capital-intensive industries, labor-intensive industries. So late 80s, 1980s was a lot of confusion. In the 1990s, when the China started reaping the benefits of the opening up, majorly because it started catering the global demand for major products. China was playing an important role in the global production chain and the global supply chain. And given that, the China was trying to gather more strong force and stand tall in the supply and production chains. So what has happened, maintaining global world markets for its exports, the exports which started in the 1990s, has been one of the key drivers of China's economic foreign policy making. It doesn't want to compromise on that. Securing access to international supplies of energy and natural resources. You talk about Chinese presence in West Asia, whether it is its engagement with Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, its engagement in Latin American countries, whether that is Venezuela, Brazil, its engagement in Africa, whether it's engagement with oil-rich Sudan is concerned, oil-rich countries are concerned. It looks like the Chinese engagement primarily in 1992, the Chinese oil import, the Chinese oil production turned into net import. That means that the Chinese producing their oil, producing their energy were short. So they started importing more oil and energy in 1992. Net oil import situation changed a lot. After that, in 1992, China started seriously thinking about its relationship with West Asia. So far, China was not giving importance to West Asia. But suddenly, the oil conditions, energy conditions put China on the back foot, rethink how it needs to recalibrate its relationship with neighbors. So West Asia, policy towards West Asia, policy towards Africa, policy towards Latin American countries are mainly profited by the energy and natural resources. So this is another second driver, important driver, which is also till now driving Chinese foreign economic policy making, insulating the economy and national wealth from potentially destabilizing external shocks. Year 1997, China's economy faces a turbulence when the East Asian financial crisis breaks out. And Chinese leadership is completely unaware what it is this, from where it is coming. Because from 1978 to 1997, in 19 years, the Chinese economy was cruising at a steady steady growth rate. And 1997 happened, the Chinese were unaware actually about the global economic crisis, financial crisis. And within 10 years, in 2007, they faced another global crisis, global financial crisis. So, what happened actually when the economy becomes, when any economy becomes part of globalized growth process, it is subject to global volatilities. That global volatilities is related to capital, market, or anything related to it. So China, since it was integrating in the global market, it had to face the brunt of the global crisis. So third important driver which is changing and deciding Chinese foreign economic policy making is it needs to insulate, it needs to protect the economic interests. Number 4, acquiring new technology, know-how and skills. There was a time when the Chinese were working as a backyard for the Western economies, many American companies, including Sharp, tea companies, refrigerator companies, washing machine making companies, they closed their manufacturing in the United States, in Europe, like the famous AC manufacturing company like Grande. They stopped producing in Europe and America because of stringent environmental conditions and regulations, and those were shifted back to China. So China was the original equipment manufacturer based on what West wanted. And all this technology and automation were given to China by the West. So until recently, China did not understand that it has to develop its own technology. Because it was importing technology, it was producing, and it was exporting to the first world, to the developed world. The relationship was very it was not composite relationship, it was very linear relationship. China was serving West, China was serving Western market, China was serving Western companies, it was not innovating. So lately China understood that, okay, fine, we need to develop, we need to innovate, we need to acquire new technologies because you just can't keep producing. You need to add value. By the time you add value, you can change. You have seen a lot of new companies, Chinese companies have come up now. It is only because Chinese are producing, getting patents, trying to innovate something, trying to bring out new dimensions to technology, and that's where they want to stand out. The last driver is about promoting the global expansion of national industries through investment abroad. You have seen, major foreign companies, whether that is companies in Europe, companies in Latin America, has been getting investments from the Chinese companies. So in 2000, after 2008, 2009, and especially after BRI was announced in 2013, the Chinese companies started going aggressive. They were not only serving as a backyard to the foreign or the Western companies, Western brands, producing and supplying. They also started thinking that, well, can we acquire foreign companies? Because it's one of the most important steps. Because by acquiring foreign companies, they could directly imperialize, they could directly get or enter into the foreign markets instead of waiting for approvals, regulatories, and supplies and demand chains. So that was one of the important drivers which has been shaping China's foreign economic policy making. Okay. So next one. So what is the important levers or important foundations after all? Economic diplomacy became a more prominent feature of Chinese foreign policy making in 2000. Okay, so it was reflected through higher budgets, expanded trade and investment frameworks, became more ambitious, confident in its own economic safeguards. Signature foreign policy initiative, radical aggressive repackaging of policy. See, essentially when 2008 global financial crisis happened, China become very confident. The Chinese say, okay, fine, we are not only competing and rising economically and strategically, but our economy can face or can out-survive the volatilities, outperform the fluctuations or crisis in global financial markets. That made China very radical. And you can see the forms in one of the forms implementing BRI, the Chinese confidence. The Chinese confidence that yes, we only not can produce, but we can sell, we can develop our own brand, and then we can create our own connections, own supply chains, and we can know how to survive, how and deploy our own way of economic behavior, enhancing the effectiveness of Chinese economic statecraft. So when this was happening, who were playing important role? Chinese banks were playing important role, not only the state enterprises, but private enterprises were also playing an important role. So these were the three important things in which literally shaped the ecosystem to pursue the economic drivers of Chinese foreign policy making. Next one. Next one. So when you talk about geoeconomics, next one. When you talk about geoeconomics, what really happened is in three different stages. For example, if you look about in 2008, the share of cost-driven R&D, market-driven R&D, and knowledge-driven R&D, you would see that actually the share of knowledge-driven R&D started making more space from in last 6 to 7 years compared to market-driven and cost-driven. So you would say, for example, the cost-driven R&D was dominating year 2008. The share of cost-driven R&D compared to knowledge-driven R&D started breaking down. So what started dominating was what knowledge-driven R&D. What that indicates? It indicates that when somebody does cost-driven R&D, what is cost-driven R&D? Cost-driven R&D is centered on cost savings. Okay, for example, a company comes to your country. Okay, what it does first, it tries to think that how it would save cost in production, right, and will get more benefits. That's the first thing. That is what happened in China in 2008. What happened in market-driven R&D? So once you reduce the cost, when you say cheap, you are occupying the market, right? So when you occupy the market, your R&D goes into how much market are you occupying. So China started experiencing the market-driven R&D in next 2 to 3 years. And the companies started thinking, now the cost is not important because now we have captured enough market, we have our own brand. They started thinking about knowledge-driven R&D. What is knowledge-driven R&D? Knowledge-driven R&D is all about how I can cope the challenges regarding the patents, cutting-edge technologies, modern sciences. Then you see that the important transformation Chinese is going through, the cost, market, and knowledge-driven. Knowledge-driven, the Chinese economy started becoming knowledge-driven. You open any surveys, surveys on sciences. The Chinese universities producing engineers, scientists, number of process patents they are applying to, not to product patents, process patents. Process patents is much superior compared to the product patents. So the number of process patents are going up because now the companies, the state government, and the provincial governments are making enough efforts that not only the prices for state enterprises also take the R&D, knowledge-driven R&D seriously. This has been an important shift in R&D focus of Chinese economy. One needs to really understand, this is exactly what was happening. This is what we call in a very simple language, this is a metabolic change in the Chinese economy. This was not a physical, this was not superficial, but metabolic. That is more internal changes. More changes which has to deal with the structures and processes the way Chinese economy were trying to change its focus, change its priorities. Next one. Made in 2025. Okay, well, like in India, we have Make in India concept, and recently the Chinese have also come up, not recently, in 2014, 15, they come up with a concept called Made in China 2025. By 2025, these are the 10 important sectors where China wants to achieve sustainable, robust, indigenous growth. Okay, sustainable, robust, and indigenous growth. What are the 10 important sectors they are concentrating on? Electrical equipment, because there are a lot of products Chinese are still buying the patents or are reliable on the patents. For example, important brands like ABB, which is into electrical switches, still dominate very strongly in Chinese markets. Electrical equipment, farming machines, the Chinese are consuming more. Chinese are consuming more. There is a problem of fertile land and cultivation. So land under cultivation is getting shrunk. The productivity of the land is going down because of the productivity of the soil is going down. So the farming machine is another priority. New materials. You have heard about rare earth materials. China dominates production of rare earth materials. Out of 100%, 90% of rare earth materials are produced, exported by the Chinese. Right from your cell phones, the buildings, electronics, everything carries rare earth materials. And if tomorrow China stops, actually there was a situation in 2012 and 13 when China stopped producing, or China put a cap on production of rare earth materials. And countries like Japan and France and Germany were in a big problem because they did not have a diversified source to replace the scarcity of the rare earth materials. So China wants to have a global say, a dominant position as far as the rare earth materials are concerned. Energy saving and new energy vehicles is another goal and priority for them. Numerical controls, tools, and robotics. Robotics you have seen in China now. There are 2 or 3 important events where the new technologies are displayed. Robotics, automation is displayed, in high places, and they give very high importance to that technology. IT, information technology, aerospace equipment. The Chinese have already have acquired enough edge on navigation. They have their own navigation system called Peking, and they're trying to go search, explore about more than lunar, about the Mars now. So they are in a serious aerospace program, aerospace engineering, and they want to be seriously involved in that. Railway equipment, China has already achieved a good scale of development as far as railway equipment are concerned. Ocean engineering equipment and medical devices are the last 2 ones. So these are the 10 important sectors China is considering in, dominate not only the self-sufficiency but going global scale and dominate the global market. So this is the important thing. Next one. Chinese cities. So just because I thought that this will be incomplete if I will talk about this. Top Chinese cities. If I talk about Shenzhen, Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, Guangzhou, Nanjing. On an average, if you look at it, 1978, the size of the Chinese cities were in billions, single-digit billion actually. 27 billion was the richest city, which was Shanghai, and then you have the 2.8 billion. So that was the range of Chinese cities, which has turned into $1 trillion. If you look at in 2018, the cities, the size of cities, 1.4 trillion to 3.3 trillion. What I'm indicating in this actually, the cities play important role over here. For example, not only Sao Paulo, Rio, Porto Alegre, big cities have a very strong say if you want to produce and take your economy further. A single city cannot take your economy further. What has happened, interestingly in China, there are 10, 12, 13, 14 one-tier cities, first-tier cities, which are taking efforts to put a lot of efforts to create multiple energies to drive the economy ahead. And this is important, this is interesting, it's happening. I think this is one more example in Asia, where a developing country is delivering so much, and the Chinese cities, or the cities are taking important steps, to push the economy in the right direction. Next week. Okay, now when I talk about these drivers, levers, what do we call it actually? We need to understand actually, okay, who is doing this, right? Important question is that when you see that, okay, fine, anybody going to the restaurant, you see a nice dish, you say that, oh my God, who is the chef who is doing this thing, right? Actually, this is something amazing. So that is what exactly happens actually. When we're in the Chinese restaurant, actually we need to see the kitchen also. You know, who is cooking, what kind of culinary skills they're using. There are three categories of Chinese actors, basically, who play an important role in globalizing Chinese agenda of transforming domestic ambitions into global ambitions. I spoke about Vision 2025, I spoke about Chinese cities. So what is exactly happening? CIC, the China International Investment Corporation, which is a sovereign fund of China, plays an important role because these sovereign funds will decide decides where the sovereign funds are to be invested. Tomorrow, if a Chinese state enterprise, or tomorrow, if a Chinese state wants to buy Brazilian bonds, it is the CIC which decides. It is not the state enterprise. The CIC decides if I want to buy the bonds, if I want to buy the shares of Petrobras, or whether I want to buy shares in a karaoke company in Rio, or a company, a leisure company in Recipe. So it is a CIC which decides. CIC decides how much the Chinese should invest. CIC decides where it should invest and how long it can invest. So it's an important thing. It's an important tool in the Chinese economic statecraft. You cannot really ignore studying the role of CIC, which right now focusing on civil aviation, nuclear technologies, biotech infrastructure, oil and gas. So that's one of the important Hulk actually, which takes a lot of anger, a lot of brand, in putting the Chinese ambitions into act. State enterprises, in China there are 109 centrally administered state enterprises, and then you have about many provincial state enterprises, and then many these state enterprises at provincial level have their own subsidiaries. The state-owned enterprises play a very important role. For example, in any economy, developing economies, I'm not talking about developed economies, state-owned enterprises play a very important role in public services, right? You take railways, you take post, you take energy, you take about telecommunications. These services are produced, provided, and catered by the state enterprises. In China, since 1949, the state enterprise played a very important role because state enterprises created a system which is called rice-bowl system. What is rice-bowl system? In 1949, when China was founded, the then leadership thought that the state enterprises will create jobs, okay, create employment, and this employment is guaranteed, and a lot of people were employed. They were given security, they were given food, and they created a social security system. The state enterprises played a very important role in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. When the economic reforms were rolled out, who was performing? It was private enterprises were performing. Who was not performing? Of course, state enterprises were not performing. The first one to fail in the test of economic reforms were the state enterprises. So state enterprises went through a lot of reforms in 80s, 90s, in early 2000s. And these state enterprises are playing an important role as far as China's internationalization is concerned. Going out, there's a policy called going out strategy. So it's the second category of set of actors which is playing an important role in China's globalization and internationalization process. Then largely privately owned companies. I can blindly say most of you can name at least 10 Chinese companies. You know, right? So those are private companies. You take, I can give you are using services of Alipay, Alibaba, Tencent, Geely, the companies like MGM, the automobile company, which is owned by Chinese. There are a lot of companies, private companies, are playing an important role. Huawei, you have heard about Huawei. You have heard about Huawei more than your own name actually last 1 month actually. Huawei is every time it's on the newspaper, it's in the media. So these are the Chinese private companies which are playing important roles. CIC is taken represent private companies. They are the key drivers. They are the key important actors which are pushing the Chinese economic policy making. Next. So when you say, okay, these are actors. So what are the instruments? Okay, they use different instruments to exercise their influence, to exercise their might. The two categories basically of instruments. One is coercive and one is incremental. So if you fall in line, for example, you're my friend, and if you want to agree with me and want to do a trade with me, definitely there are incremental benefits, incremental tools, incremental measures I will apply. But if you want to be politically incorrect with me, not fall in line with me, and if you're not smiling at me, definitely I will try to go with the coercive measures to do what I want to do. And so there are variation of these measures Chinese have been taking in global geoeconomics or geopolitics. Let's talk about incremental one, because that is what it serves the focus of today's lecture, not the coercive one. As far as trade is concerned, granting access, traded agreements, government purchases, and licenses play an important role. What China is doing through BRI. As far as finance is concerned, they are trying to institutionalize, create international financial institutions, open global markets, bailout packages, debt forgiveness. Okay, fine, if a country has more debt, the Chinese president, a leader would come and say that, okay, fine, I will forgive your debt for last year, forgive your debt for last 5 years. Official development assistance, ODAs, what Japan used to do traditionally, what Chinese is also doing now, private contributions in public health programs, and in policy level regulations, Chinese coming and doing it. So these are the important instruments being observed, implemented by three actors to serve the drivers and the levers of the Chinese economic state throughout the globe, right? So this is what the situation is. This underlines the urgency for the Chinese interest globally, economically, geostrategically, and geoeconomically. Okay, going forward. Just to illustrate one thing before we go to the next section. Interestingly, when we talk about instruments, in finance, in aid, in trade, the Chinese have been lately relying a lot on mergers and acquisitions. And mergers and acquisitions play an important role. For example, the Chinese companies will come and buy the rights of a local company outrightly, by acquiring 100% shares, 50% share, or maybe it will try to merge the company, a subsidiary in your country. There are different shapes and natures in MEA activities. MEA activities which took place between 2008 and 2010, they were mainly based on acquiring natural resources, which further graduated into imported technology and brands, which further graduated into winning at home. That means, you need to first firm up your ground home and then, export globally. So winning up at home also means, if you remember what I said, knowledge R&D. So you need to develop your knowledge R&D. You need to apply for patents, make your brand, make your value very strong at home. Try to sell it at home. And trying to deploy the best of design, best of engineering, best of technologies, and once you firm up, try to export outside. This has been the tested formula as far as China is concerned. I'm talking recently, last 10 years, not too far. So that shows, how dynamically Chinese economic terrain, Chinese economic directives and policies are changing. Next. Second section. Now, when you see that, okay, when we speak about, you're speaking so nicely about, one policy making, we are tired now, we're speaking about levers, tools, whatever it is. You spoke about actors, you spoke about instruments, you spoke about dynamics, nature, terrain of, changing, how it's changing fast. Now give us case studies, how this is happening. So when China wants to rule, when China wants to pursue its drivers, its principles, its interests globally, by supporting the actors, by not forcing, but supporting the actors, encouraging the actors to accept the instruments and test those globally. One needs to also understand that it is an important thing, because if they want to pursue these drivers, help the actors, and achieve the sustainable growth, they need to make their own rules. These all things wouldn't have been happening for China with not asking reforms in WTO, not asking reforms in IMF, not asking reforms in World Bank, not asking reforms in global institutions which are old, right? For example, when China was opened up in 1978 and it was trying to grow, it did not have time, it did not have scale, it did not have energy, it did not have strength, it did not have patience to ask the global community, oh no, we will not work with WTO, right? We will not work with this IMF, it's very biased. The important thing, the important priority for China in the 80s, 90s was not talking about the change or reforms in multilateral forums. The urgency for China was to follow, to get into the bus fast, okay? So for example, you're standing on a bus stand for 3 hours and you're getting late to your class. Your priority is getting into the bus, right? Not asking that I need a seat, a beautiful seat right next to the driver, right? The Chinese were in the same mindset, same dilemma. 1978, it was already late. 1980s, it was already late. For China, it was important to develop fast and not to ask the reforms, the institutional reforms. So it did not play anything important, it did not insist on institutional reforms. But understand one thing. The moment China started firming up, it started growing double digit. And in 2008, 2009, after surviving the global financial crisis, when it became second economy in 2015, when it deployed BRI in 2013, when it started thinking about BRICS, started thinking about SEO, China becomes suddenly aware, oh my God, I cannot have a development or reform of my own side until and unless I make the changes in the institutions. So to set the rule, to change the rules, to amend the rules, it was important for China to set or to propose new rules, right? So the reforms and the change in the Chinese economic terrain wouldn't have been possible without China giving an options. China talking about reform, China talking about changes in the global or traditional concept of nation states. That was the important change China started reflecting all about. So the change that China was asking in the global multilateral forums was the first and the last indication China was trying to be ambitious, to pursue growth, to pursue reforms, and to become, globally, economic, formidable country. Bretton Woods and China challenge. Le Maire, the Chinese, the French economic minister, the finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, what the minister says that there is a need to rethink the role of China in the global financial system. Why so? Why that statement comes from? Because The Bretton Woods order, as we know, it has reached its limits. And unless we are able to reinvent Bretton Woods, the new Silk Road might become the new world order. See, this second statement is very important. If the West, if the developed countries are not considering Chinese sentiments or Chinese reservations, there is no doubt that China would take over IMF or circumvent IMF, WTO. Is it okay for the global communities to let China circumvent these institutions and invent new? No. So what is the best thing? Best thing is you need to consider what China wants. It is the second largest economy of 30 trillion US dollars. And it has a capacity of about $40 trillion of consumer goods, consumer products by 2045. It's a huge economy. So any West economy who wants to sell, survive, and want to make China as its consumer needs to think seriously that yes, there are serious problems with the Bretton Woods system. You need to consider give a pie of interest which the Chinese are asking for. Otherwise, it's a problem. Otherwise, you have the BRI, and the Chinese are simply creating sway of their own institutions. The Bretton Woods system, actually, which have been reflected into two central institutions, IMF and World Bank, did make significant changes in the global economic reforms. But do you think that those institutions are still valid? Everybody needs to ask the question. It is not true. We are asking that yes, WTO needs to be at the center, IMF needs to be at the center, the World Bank needs to be at the center. But if they carry the biases, it is not going to benefit anyone. Rather, that is going to benefit the new institutions which countries like China are trying to do it. Okay, next slide. International Monetary Fund in China. So what happens here? The fund has been talking very aggressively about China. It thinks that China, the fund has been giving a lot of funds, and IMF has been giving a lot of funds to China. But lately, fund has understood, IMF has understood actually, really China needs the funds now. Because if China is creating its own IMF, really, do China think, or is China in a situation where China needs IMF or IMF needs China? So that calculation or that debate recently came up very forcefully. What China wants actually? China wants bigger share as far as its voting is concerned. And this is not only spoken by Chinese. Recently the BRICS countries are also talking about increase in the Chinese voting share. Why so? So the voting share between the North and South, the developed and developing countries becomes equal, 50-50%. So this has been important proposition made in IMF at the hindsight of which is going to benefit China. China is clear about what it does not want from China, and that is criticism of its controversial, tightly managed exchange rate policies. So it is important actually that China wants IMF to accommodate RMB circulation. China wants IMF to allow and declare RMB as an international currency. China wants basically that IMF should not be critically talking about fluctuations in exchange policies and the policies taken by the Chinese Reserve Bank. But China wants now, you should shut off, you should give away the biases and give voting share to us. The IMF is also looking to China to confer greater legitimacy on it. Because what happens essentially, if China creates its own IMF, the IMF which was led and established under Bretton Woods system would lose its legitimacy. Nobody would go and ask IMF, right? The former chief economic advisor and to Indian Prime Minister, who also worked in Peterson Institute of Economics, who also shares my name, Aravind Subramaniam. He wrote a book in year 2009. Aravind Subramaniam wrote a book called Eclipse. Name of the book is Eclipse. what he writes in the book is China giving loans to IMF. It was a groundbreaking statement. It says that instead IMF giving loans to other countries, the time will come when IMF will seek funds from China and will say that you give us the funds, you give us the loans, so we give that loans, we pass that loans to the developing countries. So that is the situation. So IMF is very critical, he's very cautious. IMF does not want to lose legitimacy in front of the global nation state, community of nation state. It wants to stand tall, try to go, it needs help. China wants IMF to be there for the namesake, so it doesn't want to be confrontation with IMF, but yes, it is influencing IMF. That is the first thing I want to reflect in front of you. Apart from WTO, yes, IMF is also on the Chinese radar. Why the IMF should consider the reforms serious. The next one. WTO and China. So everybody knows about what happened this year in February. As you know that China suddenly says that okay, we are not looking for any developing countries. We are developing countries, and so we will not really ask for non-market economic status actually, right? So far in last 15 years, starting from 2001 onwards, 2016, 17, 15, 17, that's 2001 onwards, the Chinese status in the WTO was of market economy because the Chinese refused to give details to WTO about the subsidies, the land rates, the state support to the state companies, and WTO says that okay, fine. If you're not giving the details, fine. We will not treat you as a developing country, but we will treat you as a developing economy. When an economy in WTO is treated as a developed economy, it loses certain privileges over tariff waivers. So China was facing problems because this case was pending in WTO, and China has been consistently, forcefully telling the world communities that we're developing. But WTO standards are saying that no, you're not developing actually. You're not declaring what the subsidies you are giving to the state enterprises, private enterprises of people. So you're not developing country. And so there will be tariffs laid on your products when you export to the rest of the world. In 2019, without any argument, China said, fine, we want the tariffs. It's okay, and we accept we are not going to fight for any status, market economic status or non-market economic status. What is the basic reason? There is a larger game plan behind this actually. There is a larger deep thinking involved behind this thing. Because basically China has understood what happened in 2019. 2019 happened because Trump is coming into the Chinese dream nowadays. Maybe once one night, but now he's coming 5 times in a night. Actually, the Chinese are really scared now because of the trade war, and now they're looking at the broader picture, right? They're looking at the broader picture. The broader picture is that we need to fight the U.S. hegemony. We need to fight the U.S. pressure on the trade. We need to fight against the Trump. Who will help us? WTO will help us, right? There was a time you will read the Chinese newspaper. Pick up any newspaper in 2015, any newspaper of any day in 2014, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. The Chinese have been left and right, north and south, top and bottom, Monday to Friday and Saturday to Sunday. Well, just blaming WTO, saying that this is defunct, it's not working, it's not helping. There are problems. Many problems, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They will mention 5 problems Monday to Friday, 10 problems on Saturdays, and they're having more time, right? What happened in 2019 because of the given of the trade war between US and China? China started thinking, well, discuss about the major things, not discuss about the small things. So China started thinking how it can use strategically, how can it use WTO strategically to append, to support its position, right? So there was a time actually China was fighting for small problems like subsidies and problems which were really not standing as a barrier. But China started thinking now, let's talk about the bigger issues. So essentially, the disagreements over the issues of the greatest concern, the United States and other development members like government subsidies, state or enterprise discipline, competition neutrality, compulsory technology transfer, and strengthening intellectual property concerns were temporarily put aside. Actually, they said, okay, fine, these are the problems. But what is the major problem? China's major and primary focus was about change in the level of transparency WTO was maintaining, and especially this is regarding the appellate body reforms. Understand one thing: when any trade dispute is brought to the WTO, the panels which studied the trade dispute, taking a sample country of the same economic size, the same inflation, same production prices, same production forces, when it gives the verdicts and an appellate body decides the results given by the dispute body, it becomes universal. So China really cannot challenge it again. So the appellate body reforms was an important thing China started thinking about. What it said, yes, we want appellate body reforms because we can ask many things to change in WTO, but unless and until we ask this whole change, the WTO will not change. So China started giving up. China started literally compromising on mini petty, smaller issues on subsidies and other agreements, and started talking about institutional changes. And that is the major thing which has taken place over in WTO. So China wants to use WTO, as one of the important tools to further its economic interest globally. Now, it's not about the concessions, subsidies, but it wants WTO to support Chinese stand. So that is another major thing which has taken place in the last couple of months, specifically. Okay, next. Well, China's geo-economic prowess. China and global financial institutions. If you look at about 3 important cases over here. Well, I've taken China Development Bank because CDB Development Bank is one bank which invests in overseas infrastructure projects, which invests in overseas investment from Chinese state. For example, if you talk about SCO, the Joint Consortium of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Joint Consortium of Banks, CDB is the largest one. In the consortium, the CDB holds about 80% of the capital. So the CDB is the boss. Well, but if you talk about BRICS New Development Bank, there are 5 members, and they share about the global population. The global population is 42% is shared by NDB. And if you look about the GDP, global GDP, that comprises of 30%, and China vote percent is 20%. So it dominates. If you just talk about Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Chinese vote share is 26%. The members are 57, and its population is 60. Covers 69% of the global population and 64% of the global GDP. It indicates how China is climbing up on the echelon of rule and control in multilateral regimes and forums. The next one. You might have heard about Central European countries. There is a forum called Central Eastern European countries, which is playing an important role, which is not new also, because it comparatively old, about decades. But what China did, China tried to align itself. Now, the cooperation between China, Central and Eastern European countries is known as 17+1. Till last year it was 16+1. This year Greece joined, and after Greece joining, it has become 17+1. The China CEC format was established in 2012, so China decided to join CEC. CEC is basically a baby and a brainchild, not brainchild really, but it works in close proximity with Russia. But China decided to use CEC as an important forum to infuse funds, to infuse capital, and to gain more control through Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese direct investment in CEC region has increased since 2012 by 5 times. The trade exchange has increased by 50%. China's CEC trade saw a robust increase of 21%, reaching $82.2 billion US in last 7 years. And in 2018, China's CEC agricultural trade exceeded $1.2 billion US. So they're talking about trade in agriculture, they're talking about investments in manufacturing, they're talking about different sorts of engagement with CEC. The next slide. Briefly talk about what the kind of engagement they have. If you look at the formats, it's crazy. China CEC Expo, China CEC Mayors Forum, China EC Transport Ministers Forum, Health Forum, they have China EC Forestry Forum, they have China CEC expos and institutes. They have about this is the institute. They have 71 plus, small, medium scale enterprises forum. That's a different forum. So you name it. China is using multiple formats within the forum to try to increase its foothold in Central Asian, in Eastern European countries. This gives you a broad picture actually what China is trying to do on a war scale in just 8 years, and that's the that's fundamental change or state that China has taken. As far as China's engagement with Central and Eastern European economies and countries are concerned. That's the thing I can give you. The next one. Shanghai Cooperation Organization. This is what I was talking about. In 2017, the Silk Road Fund. Silk Road Fund is one of the Chinese fund which was created to invest along the Silk Road project. Okay, they signed an agreement with Shanghai Cooperation Organization's interbank consortium. Okay, this is an important thing actually. This was one of such forums of consortium because the China did not sign any consortium in RIC format, BRICS format, in DeepSec format, ECM format. These are different abbreviations of projects the Chinese have taken over the BRI. But interestingly, the SEO's interbank consortium has signed an agreement with Silk Road Funds. What they want to talk about actually, they're talking about to create a mechanism to financially support and service investment projects in the SEO member countries' economy in these things. And if you talk about, I was speaking about CDP, if you remember in the last slide about China Development Bank. The asset size of the CDP reached $2 trillion and its loan balance is $1.4 trillion in 2016. That's the size of Chinese development bank. So it's something like China would say that okay, we are in the forum, we are in the multilateral platforms, let's work together. But there is a clear hierarchy which is indicated, right? So for example, I have money and I want to work with Guilherme. I say okay, we are the partners, but Guilherme knows somewhere inside that Aravind has more bucks than me, actually has more money than me. So obviously the relationship will be hierarchical, right? It is not written anywhere here, but it clearly indicates actually who is giving money. New Silk Road Fund, right? And in the interbank consortium, who is a big brother? China Development Bank. So who is cooperating? The Chinese cooperating with the Chinese. Very interesting thing over here. So that indicates actually how things are being changed, how the rules have been twisted to serve the purpose. Okay, second one. There's one more slide. So this indicates actually, the member countries of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, India, Pakistan, and PRC. And look at the economies. the economies, except you leave about Russia, you leave about China and India, these economies like Pakistan and then the four Central Asian economies are the only economies which are poor or lack infrastructure, would be used by the Silk Road Fund and the CDB to expand their footprint. Right? On the paper, it looks like a small sentence, but in terms of investment and capital flow and capital inclusion, it's a big thing. In Central Asia. So that's a colossal thing. Mistake, it has been 2 years. Anyway, next. Next. It's a repetition of this. Okay, there is a FOCA. China has been lately putting up a lot of stress on. Which are the next slides? And next. Okay, and leave the last slide. Okay, we need to go back. FOCA. I was talking in the beginning of my class, in the beginning of my seminar actually, how the African countries play an important role. So there is a forum on China-African cooperation with the Chinese have created. There is not a single geography the Chinese have left actually. If there is something there, do you know that? Do you know that all the continents? So there is a Europe, Belt and Road. America has already refused it, but anyway, America, the larger Americas, right from the Central Latin American countries like Mexico to the bottom, Africa, Europe, Asia, the extended Asia, Europe, then Australia and New Zealand. There is not a single place where the Chinese have left, which is a part of BRI, and they have included articles now. So articles are part of BRI. So BRI is flowing everywhere, left and right. So as far as Africa is concerned, if you look at about the size of investment, size of promises the Chinese are making actually. 35 billion promises being made into preferential and concessional loans, 5 billion in grants, 5 billion in development funds, 5 billion in for enterprises, 10 billion for the cooperation funds. So that is the scale in 2015 that happened actually. And the same thing what has happened is they are trying to infuse more money apart from this. More money is going into financing African projects, again into grants, credit, special funds, import, export, and investments over the next 3 years. So that shows actually that China has been doing taking a lot of efforts to expand its footprint beyond Africa, and Africa is one of the key areas for China is concerned. Okay, next one. Okay, this is China and Arab League Cooperation Forum. I was speaking about 1992, when China wanted energy. China started looking for friends in West Asia. Because by 1992, there was a situation when, because of the Iraq War, the first Iraq War, Operation Sandstorm, the Bush government was losing legitimacy in the West Asia. Russia had already burnt its fingers and it was withdrawing from Central Asia. So there was a vacuum, political vacuum in not Central Asia, in West Asia. And China was, because becoming net oil importer, was trying to fill in the gaps. It was trying to come into the picture over here. What has happened is, China has been giving a lot of importance overall to the Arab League Cooperation Forum in the form of infusion of funds, approximately 23 to 25 billion of US dollars of investment China has been promising to the Arab League countries, which is the bloc of North Africa, Horn of Africa, and Arabia agreed to create a bilateral ties to form a partnership of comprehensive cooperation, joint development, and future-oriented, strategic building. So this certainly serves the purpose of, how a forum in Arab is, trying to help China to set its own examples, of its mastering the relationship, using funds, using finances, using institutions and platforms. Okay, the next one. AIB already spoke about. I don't think I need to speak a lot about that again. I already spoke about how the share of Chinese is about 26%, where the AIB has 57 members, and the population is about 60%, GDP is about 67%. But if you compare against the Asian Development Bank and World Bank, you know, you look at the share in Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, China has about 30. China has 6.5% in ADB, and it has 4% in World Bank. So do you know that the Chinese is giving a lot of attention to its own baby, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank? It is an important thing, a milestone for China to use it to serve its purpose, to use this multilateral forum to serve its purpose globally. Next. NDB, BRICS Development Bank. Well, I mean, it is said that we have 5 members in BRICS countries, and the guaranteed capital by the countries is almost same, about $10 million. But $10 million. But the moment we talk about the guarantee, the initial capital, the initial capital assured, the China talks with 41% out of 100 billion. So what that indicates actually, that indicates that China is infusing a lot of contingency capital into the BRICS Bank. For example, if there is a situation, unforeseen situation in next year and so, where the assured capital is consumed and is no more there, member countries are going to look for the contingency capital, the pool of the contingency capital, where the China holds 41%. It was decided that okay, 18, and then China said okay, we'll try to give a major share. Africa was initially not ready to give any funds. Then China said okay, 5, we'll put 41, and then Africa can put 5. Actually, this 5 also comes from China. Indirectly. China has given 5 to South Africa, so technically it looks like the money is coming from Africa. The same thing happened, in 2010 when China held the World Expo in Shanghai. The African countries did not have money to pay for the pavilion. So what the Chinese did, the Chinese embassies give money to the African countries, and the African countries paid China on the paper. And then China said, okay, the African countries have bought this place, rented out this place in Expo. Oh, that is it actually. So yes, in BRICS, it looks good actually. I'm talking with my friends, Brazilian friends over here, but there is a larger danger looming over there. So it's still fine, unless. I know it's being recorded. So one needs to understand actually China stands really tall, as far as BRICS NDB Bank is also concerned. And frankly, China is considering the opinion about its member countries, including India and Russia. So it's a good thing for this. I think I'm just closing on this. And see the next slide. Okay, I think this is in the perspective, the last slide. So we're talking about the regional comprehensive economic partnership. I think I thought before I conclude, it's important because the mega trade deals are on the horizon, right? We can see Trans-Pacific Partnership coming, and then Trump shooting it down. There was a climate change, Trump shooting it down. Trump doesn't do anything, but he keeps shooting day and night. Actually, that's what he does. He's an interesting character in international relations. So what happens here? There is one more mega trade deal in the making. It's called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, where there are ASEAN members, so 10 ASEAN members, and we have 6 non-ASEAN members actually. We have Japan, Korea, we have New Zealand, Australia, and then we have China and India. So the 6 members apart from ASEAN. So they're forming this regional comprehensive economic partnership, and the trade negotiations, look at this actually, it's very cumbersome. Began in 2013, 30 ministerial rounds, 25 negotiation rounds, and has undergone 24 hours of exports level, and it's nowhere. And that what kills the essence of essence of RCEP. But interestingly now, it's a climax. The trade negotiation, the trade war with US has created so much of urgency back in China. Now, they want this to be done at any cost. The last year, China was talking about, can we do RCEP minus India? Can we do RCEP when the negotiations are not done? We are not done. We're ready negotiations. Oh, let it be there. We can come back and discuss about it. This is going to be one of the important tool for China to again come back in the picture, right? Because once RCEP happens, it's going to give a big deal actually. The size of economies involved in this thing is double the size of China's economy. It's 12 trillion, and the size of the economies involved in RCEP, GDP is about 23 to 24 trillion dollars of economy. So China takes this thing, China takes a great deal in understanding, pushing, and materializing the RCEPs. The next slide. That's the end actually. So this is CEC, we have seen that's 17 plus 1. We have seen FOCAC, we have seen Arab State Cooperation, Shanghai, there's ASEAN Summit, in China plays an important role, and British Development Bank. That's where I stop. And then I conclude, that's the end. So it gives you an impression actually that China is looking for long-term goals. It has serious concerns about development. It has serious concerns about reforms domestically. And to address those domestic problems, it has serious attitude, approaches to internationalize, globalize its way of dealing with the problems. To deal those problems, it has important agenda to influence institutions. If institutions are influenced, they have another agenda of creating another level of institutions. Apart from creating another level of institutions, they're using these institutions which are influenced, created to serve the Chinese economic focus. I mean, nothing wrong in that actually. Most of the Western countries have been doing that. But yes, this is what we can sum up saying that actually China is trying to set up rules to rule the global economy, and we will see that this is going to continue for next 2 to 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. I'd like to, I think we could use the microphone, right?
Yeah, of course, we don't need a microphone.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I'd like to thank Professor Aravind for this very detailed, very enlightening presentation. It's often said that when experts and academics from Brazil, they go to China, they often say, oh, the Chinese, they know a lot about us, and we know very little about China. And that's not good, and that's not responsible from the national standpoint, because China is Brazil's main economic partner.
Yes, that's right.
And its rise, it's the main story in international relations in the first 2 decades of the 21st century. So it's very important to talk about it, to discuss, and what this means, not just for Brazil, but for other emerging countries, such as India. And we are very glad that we could you could come and give us this presentation. I'd like to open the room for debate and questions. I know some people here research this topic, others not so much, but I'd like to open the floor for some questions, and we can do a little debate. We cannot go much longer though, because we only have this room until 5 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So, but I think it gives a good time to debate. So, does anyone have any questions? I think I'm going to start with one myself.
You have those?
Everyone can ask a question, and if anyone else would like to add to the table, would be more than welcome to. So I have a twofold question. Actually, one of them is sort of a continuation of what we have been discussing today about how is China going to position itself in the global international order. Is it going to be a responsible stakeholder in the existing multilateral institutions,
or is it going to consolidate parallel global order through these many institutions that you mentioned? And is it are these institutions going to pose a challenge to the Western multilateral institutions, or how is it going to be? In other words, is it going to be a peaceful rise, or it's going to lead to confrontation? And the first stage of confrontation is probably commercial, as we have been experiencing. So, what's your take on that?
That's a very interesting question. Two things. China has already created disruptions. First disruption China came up with by disrupting the production chains. China was never in the picture as far as global productions were concerned. And suddenly you will see that a lot of the production houses shifting to China. That was a major disruption China created in 1998. When it came to WTO, it was another disruption China brought in. At two levels, because it not only opened up or removed tariffs over 5,000 products, and China turned into a market. China was never a market initially. China was seen as a manufacturing place, and after it went into WTO, and when China opened up or removed tariffs, everybody wanted to jump in and wanted to go to China to sell products. Essentially, the rise of China, I would say that it's another level of disruption China is bringing in. China wants to change the institutions, the way they worked in the last 5 to 6 decades, which were not benefiting China but exploiting China. And China wants to use the institutions now to exploit it for their benefits. So that is another major disruption which is going to take place. If you ask me a question that is peaceful or not, China attempts to make it peaceful because China wants to give an impression to the global community that it's a responsible stakeholder, whether that is a political scenario is concerned or economic scenario is concerned. Because if China has an ambition to be the number world economy and a superpower in the globe, it has to be careful about its legitimacy. And that's the reason China it's trying. So far I have seen it over here. China has been doing it very calmly. BRI was a very, very calmly. It was though people and countries have been objecting about the motives and the reasons behind BRI. But these all things which I have been talking about, China's engagement in different multilateral forums, its insistence on changing Bretton Woods systems, institutions like IMF, World Bank, and WTO has been taking place slowly. But one more thing which you cannot negate and sideline is that the Chinese have been inconsistent in their approach to change the institutions, right? Because China had a very short experience because it boarded the bus of reforms and rise lately. And being a communist country, it had literally closed itself from a lot of things. And when it started influencing the institutions and reforms in the institutions, China has learned, how it can ask the reforms and development without escalating it further, without creating any conflicts further. But so far, what I believe in coming few years, coming 1 decade, the Chinese rise, if they are very careful about their economic interest, will be peaceful, and they will try to avoid it. The way the Chinese has been responding to Hong Kong, the Chinese has been responding to the new government coming in Taiwan, the way the Chinese has been responding to Abe's relationship with China, the way China has been dealing with Trump, it shows they have developed a lot of patience, and I need to agree somewhere. Sometimes I thought that after studying China for the last 20 years, China would lose its temper, but now China did not lose its temper. China kept looking for its own turn. Anybody plays cricket here? No, okay, you play not that popular, but you play football, right? So you need to wait for the weaker weaker point when your opposition loses its control over the midfield or somewhere, and then you make your way and go inside. China is doing a very smart football right now. Actually, it is not going aggressive like Brazil. It's trying to play very safe, defensive, and looking for the chances. When they get chances, it will hit many goals in one single minute. Actually, it doesn't want to do that golden hand. Actually, yeah.
So, and the second part of my question would be related to the regional comprehensive economic partnership.
Yes.
Like you mentioned how the WTO is going to play a role in how China deals with the US. They're counting on the multilateral arena provided by WTO, right, since the accession in 2001.
Yes.
But at the same time, these trade agreements, such as the regional comprehensive economic partnership and the Trans-Pacific Partnership,
Yes.
the TPP and
Yes.
the Mercosur-EU agreement,
Yes.
they are all agreements, they are being constructed outside the labels of
Yes.
WTO,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So how does this work, this dichotomy? You know, they are counting on WTO, but they are also fostering cooperation outside the labels of WTO and toward via these huge mega regional trade agreements.
Actually, these mega trades came as a replacement to WTO.
Yeah, because of the crisis that is.
Yes, and I have been talking about this when I spoke about it. If you see the Chinese positions on WTO reforms and its support for mega trade deals and FTAs was basically to devaluate the position of WTO. But you know, since those are not happening, it is taking a lot of time. The Chinese are losing patience over there, so they're not taking a balanced approach. They don't want to lose faith in WTO, which was not the case earlier. The Chinese are coming back to the table. They're taking support of BRICS. They're taking support of other platforms to say that yes, we need change. We need change in the way WTO is functioning. That was not the case earlier, actually. They would talk less about WTO. There are papers written by the Chinese scholars saying that is WTO dead? Is WTO going to get out of its functional? It's in the last stage of model form. So I think there is a shift in Chinese way of thinking now. They want RCEP to happen, but it doesn't want to override WTO principles. So that's what I said. Chinese way of looking at WTO is being a little mature now. I said about 2019, they did not go into confrontation. They said, okay, we accept what WTO says, because the game plan is something else. And I think that shows the maturity the Chinese have brought in. They want the mega trade deals to happen, but not at the cost of WTO. WTO needs to stay in, because they're using Bretton Woods system to deal with the Bretton Woods system which was proposed by the West. They're using West means, they're using the means created by the West to deal with the West. They didn't want to invest time into the new tools.
Yes, perfect. No, and your answer kind of substantiates my first question, and your answer to that, how they're counting on the multilateral institutions as a responsible stakeholder.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have two questions actually.
Yeah.
The first one would be regarding the term geoeconomics, which I noticed that you used a lot, and I'm trying to use it in my thesis research. Geoeconomics,
Yeah.
yes, but it is a term still in construction, I understand. Yeah. And I would like to know what is your take on this term? What is the concept you used on geoeconomics? Because some authors put it as part of geostrategy and some don't. So I just wanted to know your opinion, your take on it.
I think geoeconomic term is not a new term, basically, because if you talk about, there was a theory which is called core periphery theory, right, in international relations, where the core countries are controlling peripheral countries and the relationship is dependent. The relationship is very causal. It's not a very permanent relationship. The core countries are using peripheries for their benefits, right? That is one of the earliest form of geoeconomics. It was not geostrategy, because peripheral countries were not serving the core countries, but the core countries were showing them economic carrot. Core countries were showing peripheral countries that if you stay with us, we will help you, we will take you to the mainstream. So, for example, U.S. dealing with oil countries in West Asia. It was the best. It is the best example of core and periphery. It is one of the earliest examples how the U.S. was using oil, energy, as a core of its geopolitics. It was geoeconomics actually, right? The OECD countries, all the oil development countries, oil producing countries, used oil to bargain with bigger countries. So geoeconomics was there. Geoeconomics is not a new concept. Probably people may say that geoeconomics is the new concept if you just start it next to China, but I don't agree to that. Frankly speaking, geoeconomics is an older form. The manifestation of geoeconomics has changed certainly. So there is no energy. There is no energy. There is no ODAs like Japan used to do when it's to give the official development assistance. Aid for trade system, aid for trade. So these were the early manifestations of geoeconomics. Now the newer manifestation of economics is trade wars, using trade agreements, using spatial packages of aid and investments and capital inflow, are the new terms basically. So geoeconomics is not a new term. It was there, but the manifestations were different. The manifestations were different in earlier century, and the manifestations are different in this century. That's my answer.
Thank you. And my second question would be regarding Northeast Asia. So I'm taking it to the region. My research involves North Korea, and I'm interested to know, considering a stabilized North Korea, a stabilized peninsula, do you think that in terms of infrastructure, the Korean peninsula would be part of Chinese infrastructure projects, and in terms of connecting Japan and South Korea to the railroads into Europe, in terms of geopolitical issues?
The Chinese certainly do have the plans. The question is whether the Koreans and Japanese are going to subscribe to it. I doubt basically. The Chinese and Koreans are, yes, they are not really shying away from cooperating with Chinese as far as connectivity and infrastructure projects are concerned under the name of BRI. But Japanese are not really coming forward. They are very apprehensive about BRI. They're rethinking about the policies or the connectivities which the Chinese is proposing under BRI. So I don't think Japanese would come forward because Japanese have been doing infrastructure investment without any connectivity projects named like BRI before even China opened up in 1978. Japan has been investing, cooperating, financing, infusing capital into many countries under trade concessions, tariff waivers, or official development in the 60s and 70s. So that is the reason actually Japan has been really apprehensive on BRI. If you look about Japan, even proposed the Afro-Asia Summit. The Afro-Asia Summit has been owned by two countries, India and Japan. Japan has been investing a lot in Africa. So that indicates actually China would be happy to extend it to Northeast Asia. Korea is subscribing to that. Japan is not subscribing to that. As far as North Korea is concerned, it is anyway has to agree with the Chinese design of connectivities. Is this a good question that it is going to help something? Was second part of the question?
Oh, that was actually.
Yeah. So that is it actually. So in Northeastern Asia, China must be having some plans, but there are clear-cut indications that Japan is not subscribing to that. Korea, yes. North Korea is definitely yes. It doesn't have any choices.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions?
You can ask any questions. That's fine. You will not. I mean, I will not get an opportunity to answer you. So.
Okay, I have one question, please. Actually, it's a three-part question. Sorry, this is a long time. Actually, congratulations for your brilliant lecture. Thank you very much. And you mentioned that China has a very active foreign economic policy.
Yes.
And so the role of the state in China economics is very strong, and we all know that.
Yes.
But there is a debate also in our country. Many people, when they talk about China, it is the debate about whether China is capitalistic or socialist. And it seems that China has overcome this debate. That China has all the kind of symbiosis between the state and the private economy. So I'd like to know if you agree that China has found a way beyond this debate, and if you think that how it's going to be the relation between the state and the private economy in the next years, and if you think that China in this way may become a kind of model for other developing countries.
Yes. Whether it's a capitalist or socialist, the Chinese have come up with its own version. They call it China is a market socialist. Market socialist. It's difficult to talk about. Any political economist or political scientist, for him, market socialism is very confusing. Actually, it is like walking in sleep. So you're sleeping also, you're walking also. So what exactly are you doing? But the Chinese have given a practical answer to many of the communist economies or economies across the globe, that you can have such kind of combination. It's okay, nothing wrong in that. So, what is the theoretical answer to that? Theoretical answer, whether you are capitalist or socialist, the theoretical answer is when you reform, when you open up, you need to think about your own interests, right? So the Chinese leaders were thinking for the Chinese people. The Chinese people were not thinking about the textbooks which were written by somebody, right? So for them, the major worry was how they would develop, how the growth would be indigenous, right? For example, most of us, when we try to engage into debates, we always say that, oh no, India is not going capitalist, it's going socialist. But for China, it was a major worry in 1978 or 79 that the party wanted to maintain its legitimacy. So growth was important, opening up was important. Textbook theories was a different worry for them. So that's where the market socialism was invented. The second part of your question is, if the state is market socialist, will there be any conflict with the private enterprises, private market? Definitely no. Because private market or privatization is the baby of the Chinese mind itself. It is not by accident, right? So the Chinese market is not a premature baby, it's a full-term baby that the Chinese have given, right? Or it has given birth to. I'll give you one example over here. There was a famous quote by the second generation leader, Deng Xiaoping. He says that when you open window, right, you expect cold breeze, cold air. But definitely there will be mosquitoes coming in, right? For that you cannot close the window. The Chinese knew that actually the moment they will open the economy, there will be private sectors. So they wanted private sectors to come in. And if you look at the other statements made by the leaders, growing rich is glorious. So they wanted people to accumulate wealth, accumulate capital, so the privatization takes off. There's a famous book written by Nicholas Lady, Mao over Chinese market. It's a very good economy, a very good analysis by Nicholas Lady, where he says that the 40 years of economic reforms and growth is not by the state enterprises, not by the public sector undertakings, but only because of the private enterprises. That gives half answer to your question. Will there be conflict? There won't be any conflict between the private sector and Chinese state. Because Chinese state want the private sector to play an important role. For example, if you just flip over this year's and earlier years, 4 Fortune 500 companies, just open it up, okay? You will see that the number of private enterprises and public enterprises are same, right? They occupy the same role. And if you go to the Chinese Fortune 500 companies, 250 are the private and 250 are the state enterprises. So the private enterprises are the blue-eyed boy for the Chinese state. They want, because state enterprises have their own limitations to function in the foreign economies, and the private economies, the private players have the larger influence in the foreign market, like Huawei, Geely. There are many brands I can say. So the Chinese state wants more private companies to come and exist. They want them to come and outplay the public sectors and go and talk about China, how China is great. Actually, the private sector has been given a lot of encouragements and subsidies in China. They've given free lands. For example, if you go to Huawei campus in Shenzhen, where I come from, it's a huge campus. I'm 100% sure that land Huawei doesn't own. The Shenzhen municipality has given that land to Huawei. It is definitely. If you go to the head center of Alibaba in Hangzhou, where the Zhejiang provincial government has given, impossible to have Alibaba owning that land because there is no owning concept over there, right? So it is like for example, companies like TCL, right, or Mannequin Long, these companies, automobile companies. These companies have been given special assistance by the Chinese state. They want to any confederation until I retire from academics, at least next 30 years. You will not see any conflict between the state and private enterprises. Private enterprises are happy to work for state, and state knows very well actually there is quote unquote framework that private enterprises cannot cross, right? The private enterprises need to be politically correct because it is the state which is helping them. It is the brand they carry. They're Chinese at the end of the day. So they need to follow the rules set by the Chinese state. And the Chinese state knows that they will follow the rules and they will go outside and they will still talk about the Chinese brand. The Chinese are really happy about it.
Thank you, Professor. Any more questions? Last one?
You can ask any questions. It's perfectly fine.
First, thank you for the amazing presentation. It was very enlightening.
Thank you.
I am interested to know more about the role of oil in the GRIP project. And if you can speak a little about the infrastructure and finance and economic aspects of dealing with oil in the Belt and Road Initiative.
So the Belt and Road initially was all about internationalizing the Chinese presence and also overcoming the overcapacity the Chinese have built over the last 40 years. Apart from these two important principles, the Chinese have been also using this as an opportunity because BRI is a brand, it's an initiative. It gives them a chance to talk about energy sustainability, to talk about oil. Interestingly, what has happened in the last 1 decade and so, the Chinese investments in energy projects have been rationalized. There was a time actually the Chinese enterprise, including the Sinopec, including the Sinop, one of the few of the Chinese state-owned enterprises in energy production, exploration and production and supplies. Now they are trying to rationalize it. They have hit a ceiling where they don't want to over-depend on energy in BRI scheme. They want to rationalize it. They don't want to just depend in only one region. For example, they don't want to only depend on West Asia, where the maximum of the oil or energy needs of China was met by about 70%. They're diversifying it slowly. They're talking about Southeast Asia. They're talking to Indonesia. 4 years back, China was in talk with Russia for energy diversification. It always has important stakes in LAC, Venezuela and Brazil, where it wants to diversify. So what has happened over the period of time? The China is diversifying its energy needs through BRI. So the companies are internationalizing, but they are not insisting in investation, because BRI is not only about investation. BRI is about Africa, also Europe, also Southeast Asia, right? So they're rationalizing it. They're internationalizing and rationalizing it. So there is not over investments in energy areas as far as China is concerned. They're trying to make sure that they don't do over investments. Also, one needs to understand that China is going off the track. China is forming an oil cartel, but this oil cartel is not production, but for the consumption. First time in the history of global economic terrain, you would see that somebody is forming a cartel to buy, right? It is so because I think the global oil production has been dominated by supplier cartels, not by the buying cartels. So that is another manifestation to it. And who is a partner to China's buying cartel? India. So India is again on the thing. So these are the important things which is happening under Belt and Road as far as the energy consumption and energy usage is concerned. China is going a little slow on that, because over the period of time, there is overcapacity of energy also in China. There is overcapacity of thermal energy. So there is too much of coal production, too much of coal which is used to produce energy. And if you look at the indexes, the Li Keqiang indexes, this energy is being wasted. So coal production has gone down to control the thermal energy, and now the thermal energy is replacing the energy. The crude oil energy. So the dependency of China's over the crude oil energy, whether that is oil or gas, is also going down. So China is in a very win-win position actually. It doesn't want to make or to give over importance to oil and gas to rise up. At the same time, it wants to keep them control and use the excess production of electricity using coal to mitigate the deficiencies. That's the things that are happening. So it is in favor of China right now for last couple of years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to make some final acknowledgements. I'd like to thank the researchers from the Brazilian Center for Strategy and International Relations that make up the Center for International Studies and Government for making this academic exchange possible, which is not just limited to this lecture, but to a series of working meetings that we have been conducting with Professor Aravind. And I'll also like to thank the researchers from the South American Institute for Policy and Strategy, especially the line of research in China and East Asia who are present here. And I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Professor Dr. Antônio Padula, who is the Brazilian director of the Confucius Institute here at UFRGS. And we'll be joining us for a working meeting now afterwards, so we'll keep in touch. And thank you very much for coming. Thank
you. Yeah, of course. I always distinguish the question answers.
Yeah, because we can keep it going.